Deal. And we're going to talk a lot about the WPA, but there'll be some other New Deal work programs, and I'll explain them as we go along. Now, the first half of the slideshow we're going to go through fairly quick, but when we get to your local history, we're going to slow down so you can have a little bit more time to digest it. All right, so
where was that?
oh, we're going to get back to that photo, so yeah, don't worry, we'll get back to that. So this was just a little bit about myself, just so you know how I come about the information. So I was born in Baltimore, raised in Annapolis. Currently I live in West Virginia, just about an hour south of here. I'm a graduate of the University of Maryland. I've been studying the WPA since about 2010. And working with the Living New Deal, and we'll get to that, since 2011 about. And my research consisted of newspaper archives, government reports, academic books, road trips, Library of Congress, MHT reports, Historical Trust, National Archives. And currently we're in a project now where I'm scanning literally thousands of New Deal photos at the National Archives in College Park, the National Archives 2 facility. All right, so just a little background about the Living New Deal. This is how it started back in 2006, before I was with them. So they really just wanted to focus on San Francisco. That was their only ambition. But more people became interested, so they were like, okay, well, let's go ahead and do all of California. And it kept growing. So then they were like, well, why don't we just do the whole United States? Because we're hearing from people, from all over the place. And that's what it looks like today.
All right.
It looks kind of diseased. So many marks on it. It's smallpox or something. So yeah, so we're still thinking about how are we going to deal with this. This is, and we've got thousands more to go. And this is kind of interesting. This shows some of the outlying areas. To show you how far the New Deal, you got some in Alaska, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. Some New Deal monies went down to the Panama Canal area. You got Hawaii here. I'm pretty sure this is the USS Yorktown, which was sunk at the Battle of Midway. New Deal funds built that, along with the USS Enterprise. I think one of these two is Howland Island. This was going to be Amelia Earhart's next stop before she got lost. WPA money was used to build the landing strip there. She actually wrote or telegrammed Franklin Roosevelt and said, can you kind of speed it up a little bit, because I'm trying to do this world flight. And she was a celebrity back then, so lo and behold, the WPA money just kind of came quicker than it would have. And these are some sunk not battleships, but cruisers and destroyers that were sunk in various World War II battles, and they're actually popular diving sites. That wasn't the ships are Public Works Administration, and I'll get to that in a minute. Every once in a while I'll throw in a quote. So this guy says, the WPA was one of the most productive elements of FDR's alphabet soup of agencies. You might have seen this quote up there. Because it put people to work building roads, bridges, and other projects. It gave men and women a chance to make some money, along with the satisfaction of knowing they earned it. So this is a person talking about the New Deal, and Democrats, and FDR. And this was Reagan. Reagan wrote this in his 1990 autobiography. All right, so let's get to New Deal in Maryland. Now we're going to start in Ocean City actually, but we're going to very quickly move closer to here. Oh, and before we start, let me just say, there's some confusing things here. You got WPA and PWA. You got Works Progress Administration, and then sometimes you hear Work Projects Administration. So WPA is Works Progress Administration, later renamed Work Projects Administration. Thankfully, the initials stay the same, otherwise it would be hell to research. So the WPA, they wanted unemployed people taken off the relief rolls and put on jobs. Most of the money went towards that. PWA was different. PWA was large federal grants given to localities to build large projects like the Grand Coulee Dam and stuff like that. And they hired private contractors to do that. So WPA, unemployed, all sorts of projects. PWA, mainly private contractors, typically larger projects. There's some leakage between the two categories, but you get the drift. All right. So this is the Ocean City Inlet. It was built by mainly National Industrial Recovery Act funds and the Army Corps using those funds and some help from WPA labor. So, of course, today it's used, fishermen use this all the time to go out and go fishing. So, this is the Coast Guard cutter Tawny, which is now a Baltimore museum ship. And it was funded by the PWA. Remember, that's not unemployed people, but New Deal money is going towards large projects. And this was one of several Coast Guard vessels built with PWA funds, 1933, 1934, thereabouts. And so, excuse me, that's a really interesting ship because it's billed as the last survivor of Pearl Harbor. It wasn't in Pearl Harbor, it was in Honolulu Harbor. But it fired some shots from their guns that some people credit them with breaking up an attack on a Honolulu power station, aerial attack. So you got this ship, it's really interesting. You got several layers of history. You've got New Deal history, you got Coast Guard history, you got World War II history. It was very active during the war. Repainted, added guns to it, and it served with the Navy took it over and used it. It was in the off Europe, and it was also in the close to Japan in some of those major engagements. So if you ever get a chance, if you're ever in Baltimore, it's very neat to see. All right, so now we're getting a little closer to where we're at. So this is Antietam National Battlefield, and this particular shot was at the cemetery. All those are WPA men. The two women in front, one was in the National Youth Administration, which was a subdivision of the WPA for the first few years. And the other one, I think she's just a National Park Service regular employee. What's interesting about this place, well, they did all sorts of things. They reset monuments, they did road work, they repointed the walls on the cemetery there. And there's actually a time capsule in one of the corners of this cemetery. So I asked the National Park Service there if they would excavate it, and they didn't like that idea too much. But they did tell me what was in it. It's nothing, earth-shaking, just like some coins and stuff. All right, so now we're getting a little closer. So this is Fort Frederick Civilian Conservation Corps rebuilt the walls, and you can kind of see the different colors on the walls, which denotes probably where the CCC rebuilt it up. And this is now a National Historic Landmark. And the structures around Fort Frederick, different cabins and maintenance buildings, most of them were built by the CCC, and one of them actually serves as a museum, or at least it did a few years ago. This is a really, really beautiful building. This is one of the most beautiful WPA buildings I've ever seen. This is in Williamsport. It's the town hall. There's a cornerstone that gives the WPA credit, but it's right behind. It's in the lower right-hand corner behind that bulletin board. So they kind of rude. Yeah, I mean they should get credit for it, but it's there. Trust me. But it's just a wonderful building. The stone is so white and clean. It's really amazing. There's also a WPA-built library in Williamsport. It's a community building, probably a few other things. The library in Williamsport was dedicated to a bunch of students who died in a bus crash in 1936 or so in Rockville. They were students, Williamsport High School students. So the library was built in their honor as a sort of memorial. Now here's another quote. So, the things they have actually accomplished all over America should be an inspiration to every reasonable person and an everlasting answer to all the grievous insults that have been heaped on the heads of the unemployed. That was Harry Hopkins, who was the head of the WPA for the first 4 years of its existence. And he said this at Louisiana State University, LSU football stadium, because the WPA had expanded the stadium. Harry Hopkins was a very interesting character. He was just a die-hard advocate for the unemployed and for the poor, and he, to the point of being belligerent. A lot of people thought he was belligerent because if they insulted the unemployed, he would come back at them with that and more. So he's a very inspiring character to me. This is the Romney School for the Deaf and the Blind. You might have drove by there. Now, not the whole campus is New Deal. Some of that stuff dates back to like the Civil War. But this particular building, the elementary school building, it's a big H-shaped building. That was PWA funds that went towards that. So that has a cornerstone too, 1939 or something like that. Now, so this might look familiar to some of you. This is Fort Ashby. Not built by the WPA. I'm not trying to give them credit for building it. But they were there, and that little street marker, if you drive by there, you'll see the WPA mentioned on that street marker. I don't have a close-up of that, but I do have a close-up of this. So this is on the front of the building as you're walking. It's close to the front door. So it says Fort Ashby, built 1755 by order of Colonel George Washington, restored 1939, Works Progress Administration, sponsors Mineral County Court and the Potomac Valley chapter of, is that National Society, Daughters of American Revolution?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I think it is Daughters of American Revolution. I'm not sure what that stands for. So what's interesting, so this kind of gives you an idea of how WPA projects worked. And we can use the library as an example because WPA workers were here. Inside this building, renovating books that were dilapidated, cataloging, helping the staff. They apparently they painted either outside and or inside. I'm not sure what the details are, but basically the city of Cumberland, not the state of Maryland, but the city of Cumberland would go to the WPA and say, we have this many unemployed people and we have this much money to work in the library. Can you fill in the gap? Typically, localities had to pitch in 20%. The WPA would pitch in 80% and get the job done. And most of the WPA money went to payroll for relief workers who were taken on the job. And most of the local money was for supplies, paint, things that would repair the books in this library. There's actually, if you're interested, on the opposite side of the pyramid as you go, there's an old newspaper article saying what the WPA did in this library. All right, so this is the Tiger Valley Dam, in case any of you all ever been there. It's in West Virginia, obviously. PWA funded, see, this is what I mean. PWA funded massive, huge project. Swallow Falls State Park, CCC, of course, in the parking lots.
What did they do there?
Let's see, I don't think it talks too much about what they did in Swallow Falls State Park on this historical marker. But that building, the Rangers headquarters, they made that. The pavilion that's there. There's a restroom facility there that I think has been turned into a storage shed.
Towards the bottom it does. Built roads, trails, bridges,
Yeah.
recreation facilities.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a general statement for the, so the CCC built roads, trails, bridges, and recreational facilities that are still in use throughout Maryland state parks. And yeah, I mean, they did that in the park there. Yeah.
The stairs and things that are still stone as opposed to having been replaced with wood in the past 20 years, those were laid by the CCC.
Yeah, if you all having, I should have mentioned this, if you all have any questions or have additional information, just pipe in, especially when we get to Cumberland, because I'm not a Cumberland historian, so you can probably help me out a little bit. We're going to get there and get started. All right, so this is the Oakland Golf Course. If any of you all are golfers.
Muddy Creek, but the ones over by the tall road.
This little information plaque talks about the WPA's work there. I think they built the first 9 holes, and then the second 9 holes was built at a later time. So across the United States, they worked on 55,000 acres of golf course. I think about 600 golf courses total. Some new construction, some just improvements. This, I couldn't get a good picture of this, so it doesn't do it justice. But this is the post office mural in the Oakland post office. If you ever get a chance, go in there and check it out. It's called Buckwheat Harvest by Robert Gates. It was a U.S. Treasury or a Federal Works Agency project. Both of those are New Deal programs. A lot of people think the WPA did that, but these post office murals were U.S. Treasury projects, but they were New Deal art programs. There's one in Hagerstown too, and more in central and eastern Maryland. But the only two I'm aware of out this way is Hagerstown and Oakland.
Did you say the WPA did most of the post office?
No, they didn't.
They
It
did
was
not.
U.S. Treasury that did that.
I always thought it was WPA.
Yeah, the U.S. Treasury, they had a Public Works of Art project. They had a Treasury Relief Art project, TRAP. They had a section of painting and sculpture, and then the name changed and stuff. So yeah, it's a cool mural. It's pretty big.
They did 2 murals in the old Ellicott City.
Yeah, Ellicott City. Yeah. There's some on the Eastern Shore where they did some wood. There's one on the Eastern Shore where they did like a really nice wood carving, like American Indians. So you all are familiar with this. I didn't hike very far for this. I just went to the Overlook. So not inexpensive. All right. So anyway, so they were there. I don't know exactly what they did there. probably a lot of tree planting. I believe that the head ranger